What's up everyone? It's Vaughn from Luv Lola. Welcome to my channel. Okay, so let's make our zipper pocket really quick. This is gonna be super easy, super fast. So I cut my pocket piece I cut it 13 by 10 inches. And then I found the center of my lining piece and the center of my pocket. I measured down 3/4 of an inch and centered, and that's where I placed this piece. Once I had it placed, I went ahead and pinned it, and then I measured down 1 inch from the top of this lining piece and centered, and I drew a line. I'm gonna make this pocket 8 inches wide. I drew my first line 8 inches wide, and then I scooted down 1/2 inch and drew my second line, and then I made a box out of it. Now we're gonna go and we're gonna be attaching this to this lining, and we're just gonna sew right over those lines. Now your lining should be right side facing up, and your pocket piece should be right side facing down. Now we're just going to draw a line down the center of this rectangle that we just made, long way. And I'm going to stop that line at about 2/8 of an inch from the end, and then I'm going to draw a little triangle that connects to that line. And now I'm going to cut on that line and the 2 little triangles on the edge. We're cutting as close to that thread as we can without actually cutting the thread. I need some new scissors, like yesterday. All right, now we're just going to bring this through. To the back. Now, if your fabric is really thick, like mine is pretty thick, if you need to, you can trim that down. This material right here. Or if you're able to apply heat, you can apply heat to it to help you get that crease. Otherwise, just finger press it as best as you can. Cut that little snip. And I'm cutting a little extra material on the lining. I'm not cutting the little snip of the lining pocket. You don't want to cut that. Okay, so what you can do to make this as easy as possible is use some double-sided tape to get this attached. It just helps make it easier. I can't find my 1/8 inch tape. It's my favorite for doing zippers. It stays out of the seam allowance. It's perfect, but I don't have time to look for it right now, so I'm just going to use my regular tape. Okay, and I'm going to attach one side at a time. So I'll do the top first. And I'm just going to do my best to center this in my window. Centering that zipper tape as best as I can. Once I have the top on, I'm going to do the same to the bottom. Okay, and now we're going to go and sew around the entire thing at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm going to leave my my thread long because I don't want any back stitching on my pocket, right? Alright, and now I'm just going to tug on the strings that are showing in the back, and what that's going to do is pull my thread from the front. And now I can just tie it in a knot. Okay, once I've tied that off, I am going to just take the bottom of my pocket, bring it up, and match up all of the edges. Alright, now we're going to sew it closed. We're going to start at one of the bottom edges, up, all the way back around to the other side, and it's going to close this up. And I'm sewing this at about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay. You have to be careful. I think that when you eat spicy food, it makes your mouth do that.
Like allergies?
Yeah, because you ate that pizza the other day and you said it was spicy. And now it looks like your mouth is. Okay, so we're about to get this accent piece put on. What you want to do is, remember we added that interfacing, and now we're going to use it as a guide to fold this over. Now first we're going to make some snips. I need them to be super tiny. Like if you make your snips too long, when you fold it over, it's going to be like buckering. Is that the right word? It's going to be lumpy. So you don't want to snip all the way down to where you added the interfacing. You want to just do tiny, tiny little snips. Now we're going to grab some double-sided tape, and we're going to place it right below that interfacing. Right below the interfacing. Now there are some tiny curves that are almost not noticeable with the eye on this. And we want to make sure that we keep that curve because that's what's going to give us that pretty little shape of this accent piece. So I'm going to add some snips in my tape as well so that I can bend it along those little curves to make sure that I keep the correct shape. Okay, be very precise with this. All right. Now we're going to fold on that line. So we're going to be folding right where the interfacing starts. That's what we're folding over. Take your time. All right, perfect. Okay, now when you grab your clutch, make sure that you're placing this on the right side because there's a little bit of curve on the bottom. It's hard to confuse it, so just make sure that this piece is facing the correct way up where it's straight across at the top. All right, now I'm gonna place it, matching up my midpoint on the bottom of both pieces. Okay, now we're gonna go and top stitch along the top of this accent piece at 1/8 of an inch. Now let me tell you this. After you top stitch this, what you can do is turn it over and then you can trim off the rest of this piece at about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance after we add it to the top. So that way it can open up your seam, it can make your seam allowances not as thick. Does that make sense? So instead of having, for example, let me show you, I did my other one. I left this piece on, but what I could have done is cut it right here. And then just cut this whole bottom piece off to make my seam allowance be thinner. So instead of there being 2 pieces of fabric right now, there could be 1 on the bottom. I didn't do that because I actually like having that extra material. I feel like it's like an extra stabilizer. It's going to make my clutch really sturdy without having to add Pellon 70 or anything like that. Also, I know that my machine can handle it. If you feel like that would be a problem, because you know once we get this added together, we're gonna be attaching this together. So if you feel like sewing through, you will have 4 pieces of fabric to sew through. If you feel like that's gonna be an issue, then by all means cut this back piece off after you sew it on, okay? I'm gonna leave mine, but that's an option for you. Or even if you wanted to cut it down where it's still there, but it's not all the way to your seam allowance, you can do that as well. So you can have some more stability without it being in the seam allowance. Okay. Like I said, I am going to get this attached at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and since I am leaving my back piece on, after I do that, I'm going to go ahead and keep going and baste around the remaining perimeter so that it's all attached to each other. Take your time when you're doing this part. You don't want to rush it. You want to make sure that this seam is nice and pretty because it's on the very front and we've got that delicate little curve right there. You can barely see it, but it's there. So you need to make sure that your top stitching is perfection. I'm just going to take my time. If you need to hand crank it, hand crank it. Do whatever you got to do to make sure that you are right on point with this. Alrighty, let's get our handles put on. I'm getting so excited now. Okay, so I decided that I want my handles to be 2 inches apart. So I found my midpoint and I measured out 2 inches, and that's where the inside of my handle is going to go. Okay, so this is the midpoint. 1, 2, that's where I'm placing the inside of my handle. Same thing on the other side. My midpoint, go out 1, 2, and that's where the inside of my handle is. So I went ahead and placed double-sided tape at that mark so I can get these attached. Like I said, I'm going to make mine a crossbody, and I decided I'm going to be adding my straps right to the outside of my handle. So one of these that we made is going to be going on the front of my bag, and the other one is going to be going on the back. I actually went and cut my handles shorter So they are now actually 12.5 inches long. I don't like a big long handle. I don't know. That's my preference. So do what you have to do, but these are now 12.5 inches long. Okay, so I'm going to take that tape off. So my panel, my main panel is right side facing up, and you want your handle to be right side facing down. I'm going to place it right there at that 2-inch mark. I'm going to make sure, there we go. And now I'm going to take my little connector piece, and I'm going to place it right next to it. It's actually touching the two pieces because I don't mind if that piece is a little bit behind. I actually want it to go a little bit behind the handle. Okay, and now I'm going to go and baste this on at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Now I am going to just bend this, making sure that it stays where the right side is facing down, and place it right over that tape. Double check it. Okay. And I'm going to baste this on as well. All right, you can go ahead and repeat the same thing to your back panel. I've already done mine. Cute. Okay, now let's get our fringe attached. Where is my fringe? First thing I'm going to do is fold this in half. And I'm going to go ahead and baste it together. I think it'll just make it easier on the next step if we have it basted together already. Basting it at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. That's just... All right. All right, I'm going to grab the front of my bag. If you haven't put your label on, go ahead and get your label added. I placed mine about 1 inch up from this bottom accent piece. All right, I'm going to find the center of my fringe. My panel is right side facing up. I'm grabbing my fringe. I'm meeting up at the midpoint. And I'm pinning. You know what? I'm actually going to cut a little bit off the top of this. because I left an inch earlier when I cut this, and I don't want the fringe starting that far down. So I'm going to cut half of an inch off of this. That's just how... Yeah. Alright, before I cut this, I'm going to go ahead and add a stitch right above it. I mean right below it. Okay, yeah, does that make sense? I didn't want quite as much extra space that was there when I add this to the bag before the fringe start. I want the fringe to start pretty quickly after it starts coming off out of the bottom of the bag. Okay, here we go. Let me find my midpoint again. I'm gonna match up the midpoints. All right, let's get this basted on at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, let's grab our back panel. And my panel is right side facing up. Whoops. Let's find our zipper. I'm going to apply double-sided tape because I'm just, you know. Okay, so this is the back of my bag. We want our zipper opening, or I like my zipper to open to the right and close to the left. So if we were doing the front of our back, we would place it like this, but this is the back, so I'm going to imagine it going over here so I can get my zipper placement. So that means right now, if you're using the back panel, you want your zipper to be closed to the right and opening to the left, okay? I've got my double-sided tape on. I am going to take that off, and I'm going to center this zipper. All right, matching up the midpoint. Okay, if you're not using double-sided tape, you can just get that clipped on and you can go and baste it at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to add another layer of double-sided tape. Now I'm going to grab my lining piece. If you like your zipper to be against your body, then go ahead and grab the lining piece that has the zippered pocket. Okay? So main panel is facing up, zipper tape is facing right side down. And now we're going to place our lining on top, and it's going to be right side facing down as well. Match up those midpoints. Okay, and get it pressed together. Okay, so our original panel is right side facing up, our zipper is right side facing down, and our lining is right side facing down. We're going to get this sewn together at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to go ahead and put my zipper foot on because I don't want to mess this up. Okay, so once we've got that sewn together, we are going to just open it. And we're going to kind of finger press what we just did open. Okay, now we're gonna close our fabric so that it is right sides touching. And we're gonna get ready to go and add a top stitch along the front of this bag. Now, if you want to add a clip to the sides to keep everything kind of lined up, you're more than welcome to do that. There we go. There we go. Okay, and now we're sewing along the top of this, right underneath that zipper that we added, at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Panel is right side facing up. I'm going to get some tape added. Lining is right side down. Make sure your pocket is facing the right direction, okay? Don't get it attached upside down. Oh, I lied. We're going to do zipper next. I'm going to go ahead and close my zipper up. Okay. Now, we need to get this, make sure that this handle is pushed down between the two when you attach this, okay? Find the midpoint. All right. Get another layer of tape attached. All right. Grab our lining. We're going to place it right side facing down, right over the center. All right. Now let's get this attached at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right. Flip it over, and we're going to do the exact same thing we did a second ago. We're almost done. Oh my gosh, this is so nice. All right. Now we're going to add our top stitch on the front. Make sure that you get your handles out of the way and you don't sew through that. Your opposite handle is going to want to kind of bend that way, but don't let it show it who's boss. You are. You're the boss. So now we're going to go ahead and get this attached. First thing, what I like to do is I braid my fringe. And that's how I keep it from getting caught up while I sew it. So I'm going to divide it into 3 pieces. And do a very loose braid. Now we're going to open this up and we're going to be sewing our exterior to each other and our lining to each other. I'm going to unzip it halfway. And let that go through the top because it's fine. Okay, so we are going to line up the bottom corner actually what you want to do is, so this is where our sides are. We want to match up the exterior part of our bag. So this piece right here, match it up with the exterior of the other side. Make them touch. So the tip of the exterior is touching the tip of the other exterior, and then you're going to take the lining and just move it out of the way. And I'm going to add a pin. For stuff like this, I like to use my metal clamps because they don't let it move. We don't want any shifting going on. They're available on my Amazon storefront. There's a link below this video. I might add a link at the top of the screen right now. Okay, now flip it over and do the same thing to the other side. Match up. You're matching up your exterior pieces. Okay? And you're moving the lining out of the way. Also, your accent pieces should match up exactly. So if you want to go and pin that right now, before you pin the entire side, then go ahead and match up those accent pieces. And then if you need to do any kind of like maneuvering to get everything else in line, then you can do that. But you do want those accent pieces to match. Check over here. Perfect. Okay. Now we're going to match up our bottom, making sure that you have pushed your fringe down in there so that it doesn't get caught, okay? Match up my midpoint. Again, if you need to cut some of your seam allowance out of your main panels, then go ahead and do that. I'm going to keep it there, and then I'm going to probably hammer it down or use my other tool to flatten it out because I know that it's going to be super thick. Now, if you like, you can do just your exterior and then go back and shove this down the opposite way to make it easier. Or you can do it all at one time and just ball this up again. Whatever way you feel comfortable, as long as you know that you can keep your fringe out of the way, then you're good to go. I think that I'll be fine doing it all at one time. Okay, so let's talk about the transition. Well, first, we're going to leave an opening along the bottom about, you know, there's no need to make yourself struggle to turn this bag out. So I don't like to leave a little hole. I'm going to leave as much as I need. So I'm going to leave probably about, this is 12 inches. So I'll take an inch, 12, 11, 10. I'm going to leave about 8.5 inches open along the bottom to turn this bag out. 8.5, 9 inches. We're going to be getting this attached at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so we're attaching this at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, but we want our lining to be bigger. But we want our lining to be bigger so that it's not saggy inside, right? So we're going to be doing the exterior at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, but our lining needs to be attached at about, I would say about 3/8 to 1/2 of an inch. Now, as soon as my needle passes the material, that I'm using for my exterior, I am going to immediately start increasing my lining, because that little side area is where we always have that extra material going on, right? So I'm talking the next stitch after my exterior is connected, I'm going to scoot in 1/8 of an inch to between 1/8 and 2/8 of an inch on that next stitch. Okay, I want that to happen so that I can immediately start getting my lining to fit better. And then from there, I'm going to slowly increase it to 1/2 of an inch around the remainder of the way. And I am going to be leaving the bottom open. So with that being said, I'm going to start on the bottom of my lining. I did a little extra stitching because we're going to be turning it. All right, I'm keeping that 1/2 of an inch seam allowance.
What is it?
Yes, thank you so much.
You're hungry?
Mm-hmm.
Now there's duckling and sawfish.
Yay!
Is that what you wanted for breakfast?
Mm-hmm. I smell it. It smells so good.
Hmm?
All right, I'm getting close to
You can
that.
smell it?
I'm getting close to that point where my exterior is going to be starting. So I'm slowly going in. Okay. All right, my next stitch is going to be my first stitch on my exterior material. So I'm going to twist it a little bit so that this next stitch is making a sharp turn in. And I'm going to continue to go at that sharp turn until I am 1/4 of an inch from the side of my bag. Okay. And now I am going to sew the remainder of my bag, the exterior, at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so before you turn it out, have a peep inside and make sure that none of your basting is showing along the side of here where, you know, we added those accent pieces. Also, if you would like to add a second stitch on your exterior at 1/8 of an inch, you can do that as well. I'm also I like to add a second stitch along the area where the lining meets the exterior. So I'm going to get that added really quick. All right, now I'm going to trim down my seam allowance. I'm not going to trim down along the bottom of the lining. I'm going to leave that the way it is, but I'm going to trim along the sides. And I'm trimming down to about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Same thing for my exterior material. All right, go ahead and trim down your edges. Don't trim down the bottom where the hole in the lining is. Leave that seam allowance long. All right, I'm going to reach in and pull it through. Alright, make sure you check the bottom of your bag and there's no fringe that is stuck or just any weird stuff going on, okay? It looks pretty good to me. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and close up the bottom of here. And what you're going to do is just kind of pull tight. And when you do that, it's going to naturally want to curve in. You can also curve it in yourself. Whatever it takes. There's no right or wrong way. Just get it close. I can see my midpoint for both of these, so I'm going to go ahead and match up my midpoints. Stick your fingers in there to point out, like box out those corners as much as you can. Alright, let's get this sewn closed. We're just sewing this at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Alright, we're going to just tuck that in. Those points tucked in the corners. If you need to use a tool, then by all means use a tool. Alright, and now we're going to use our fingers to poke out our corners. So we're just kind of using our thumb to shove the corners out. Same thing over here. Place your thumb on the inside and just push out. You actually should have poked that out before you sew. I should have told you to poke those out before we sewed our lining closed. It's easier when you can put your hand through the lining and do it. So my bad. Love it. Okay, let's get this unbraided. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. Okay, let's grab our strap that we made already. Love it. The game is on, y'all. How gorgeous is this bag? Oh my gosh. I love it more than the original. Alright, thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful at all, please give it a like. You can subscribe. You can definitely share. If you like this bag and want to purchase it, visit my website, lovelolalooks.com, and you can place an order for it. All right, that's it. Let me get some pictures.